it's great just flicking through now. My screen is just completely full of faces. And there's a few more logging on. But I tell you what, whilst we wait for the last couple, what's going to happen today is, for those of you who don't know me, hi, I'm Adam. I hope most of you know me. Over here, at least she's over here on my screen, maybe she's somewhere different, is Oana. And Oana and I have been working for quite a while now together, like 3 or 4 years, coaching all kinds of speakers behind the scenes, people often who've got absolute zero experience. They've maybe never talked in public before. And what we do is we find their story and we help them share it with about 1,000 people live, and then something like 21 million YouTube subscribers as well on our TEDx channel. And we help get them ready for prime time, even if they've never spoken in English before. And it's perhaps one of the most terrifying things that they'll ever do. But if we can do that for them, you guys, you're all cool, you're all interesting, you're super cool people. And so I hope that some of the tips that we're going to give you in this next hour are really going to be helpful. So one of the things, if you've not met Oana before, she runs a project called the Speaker Coaching Diaries, which is really cool. You can find it online. Don't worry, at the end, we'll send out a load of links about if we talk about any videos or anything, we will send you to the email that you got this ticket from, everything that you need. But if you've got a pen and paper and you want to make notes, now could be the time, because basically we're going to give away all of our gold dust, because we thought, why not? All of the big events are closed down because of the lockdown, so we may as well just share everything that we've got, and in the hope that you guys will become phenomenal speakers and maybe one day end up on the stage as well, or maybe doing really good pitches or something like that. Now, I know there's a lot of entrepreneur students here as well. So shout out to all the entrepreneur students. And the golden rule is if we help you and you use these tips in a really good pitch and you go on Dragon's Den or one of those shows, something like that, and you get the $1 billion from the big investors, don't forget to cut us in for a small percentage, because I'll be honest, on a teacher's retirement fund, it's not going to last long. So basically that's the retirement plan. So as long as we can agree to that, we're fine, right?
So we're all each other's social security, basically.
Something like that. But what I'd like to do to get started is, there's a cat on the webcam. Yes, brilliant. Bonus points. Bonus points for kittens. Fantastic. He looks like he's having fun. He looks like that's a cat who needs some presentation skills. So what I've got is I've got a little poll, because a few weeks ago, Oana and I surveyed 60 different speakers to find out what their biggest pains were, what their biggest dramas were. And what I thought I would do is I would take the top 10 results and share them with you, and then ask you guys what your biggest problems are, and you can vote on them, and then we'll cover whatever it is that you vote for. So this is completely freeform. So I think if this works, if I press this button.
Also say hi to the gorgeous dog.
Oh, is there a dog as well? Oh, fantastic. So hopefully on your screen, a poll should be appearing, and you can vote for the things that apply to you. Take a little look. You might need to scroll up and down because there might be some that you haven't seen. So I want to know who wants to keep the audience's attention, keep them interested and engaged, who worries about what people think if they make a mistake or say the wrong thing, who wants to be better with body language, who goes off topic and says random things, who gets freaked out by questions or challenges, who wants to add jokes and fun, something cool, something different into the talks, who needs help with structure, and how to organize things, who gets nervous, who wants to be more confident, who talks too fast, whatever it is, tell me, and I'm excited to learn. And this is really cool. I can see as everybody is voting, all the little percentages and everything going up. And about half of you have voted already. The other half is going for, if it's not multiple choice. Oh, people say they want to make multiple choices. Oh, just pick the best one. If you pick your most favorite one, perhaps I didn't check the multiple choice option. We can't vote for everything, but let's take a look and see. 80% of people voting. Oh, this is kind of good. I like this.
Really cool. Yeah, lots of people care about engaging the audience. That's really good. That means we care about our audience. Okay. Confidence is a strong runner-up.
Yeah.
All right.
Getting nervous, that's a big problem too. Okay, there's just a few of you who haven't voted yet. We're waiting for the last few. So please make up your mind, make up your decision, or just close your eyes and press. We'll see how it goes.
That's how I learned to drive, Adam. Just close your eyes and press.
That is not a good strategy for learning to drive.
No, but when you come from Bucharest, sometimes you just have to.
Now, what I should mention as we're waiting for those last few votes to come in, there's a couple of things that you should probably know about this Zoom meeting, which is if we all unmute ourselves all at the same time, it's all going to go completely crazy and we're going to get mad echoes. So instead, what I would like you to do is to be like really physical with your face so that I can see your reactions. So I want to see big smiles and positive body language and all that good stuff. So if there's something that you like, I want to see big thumbs up. If you double like it, I want to see double thumbs up. If everything's, I've seen lots of double thumbs up already. This is nice. If there's something that you're not too sure about, I want to see like medium hands. And then if there's something that really sucks, I want to see the thumbs down. And so that means that if we've got if there's something that's going wrong, I want to see how that all goes. Okay, the last few votes are coming through, and oh, I can see everything, and I'll just press this button now. Okay, cool. Okay, so we've got all of those ones, and let's just okay. So I'm having a look, and by far the biggest one is I want to keep the audience's attention, keep them interested and engaged, and get a good reaction. This is hitting like 26% of you. So let's start with that, and then let's work our way down in the order of how popular they are. Does that sound like a good plan? Thumbs up for a good plan? Yeah, no, I'm glad it's a good plan because we haven't got a backup plan. This is the only plan we have. Wonderful. So this
we always
is one.
tell people not to improvise. So
exactly, that's true. We've got to play a little bit of improvisation today. So today, keeping the audience interested is perhaps one of the most difficult tasks in the world if you are a boring person. Now, you guys, you're not boring. I'm pretty sure that you're not boring, but we've all been stuck in that boring presentation. Raise your hand if you've been stuck in that boring lecture or something where you're practically falling asleep at the end of it. And for some reason, people who are boring think that the only way to talk is for like a 27-hour lecture or something like that. The boring ones are never short, right? I don't know why that is. And the thing is, the reason why we see so many boring presentations is because people feel like they have to do all the boring stuff. They have to talk about boring stuff. My students do this all the time when they're working on a project that they absolutely hate, and then it comes to exam time and they have to present the bits that they absolutely hate. And you can slowly see them dying ever so slightly inside. And I can see some of the faces of my students here that I know. I've seen your engineering exams. I know when the project's gone wrong and it's like, oh my God, I want to die. But the thing is, boringness is not necessarily inherent in the talk. The tough news is boringness is inherent in the person. Have you ever been to a party and you have met the single most boring person in the universe. Raise your hand if you've been on that really bad party, or that really bad Tinder date, or whatever it might be, where it's just the most boring guy in the world, and it doesn't matter what he says. He could be telling you the most exciting thing, but it's boring. Well,
and remember, Adam, one time you told us about this person who was super excited about Excel sheets. And there was nothing more fascinating in the world except Excel sheets for this person. And obviously they're not really so exciting, but because she was talking about it with so much oomph, you almost got excited about Excel sheets, which is saying a lot.
That's true. If you're an excited, energetic person, you're going to be excited about what you have to talk about, even if the subject is boring. But the trick is, and I always give this advice, this is my number one most important piece of advice, the only way to give an interesting talk is to live an interesting life. If you live a boring life, you will give a boring talk, no matter what. Because I also bet that you've been at that party and you've met that one person who is so super interesting, and they could tell you anything, about spreadsheets, about something that you've never even heard of. But if they are a genuinely interesting person, it really comes out. Christian is one of those people, because what he does with watchmaking, it's so tiny and it's so minuscule, and you've got to look at everything through little microscopes almost to do it, and it's so minute and it's so technical, and yet the way that he comes alive when he talks about it can make it interesting to anybody. So it's not necessarily if you're interested in the subject, it's if you're interested in the person. So what I like to think about is, if there's ever any boring bits in your presentation, just cut them out. And it might seem like, no, I've got to do the boring bits. No, you don't have to do the boring bits. Whenever you see a Hollywood blockbuster movie, you never see the boring bits. You don't see the hero wake up in the morning, eat breakfast, and read the newspaper. You don't see the hero brushing his teeth. You see the hero in a car chase with the explosion, saving the day. You see the exciting bits. You never see James Bond going, oh, I've got to answer all my emails, and then I've got a meeting at 3:00. You never see that. You never see the hero of the movie doing their tax returns. If there's something boring, take it out. Only show the fun stuff. And if you think that your whole meeting or your whole presentation is going to be boring, then maybe the presentation isn't the right medium for you. Presentations can really help inspire people and get people motivated. So if it could be done as an email instead, send the email. You'll save everybody time. And that's a real top tip to live an interesting life. Now, the fun thing about this is you might be thinking, oh God, what if my life is secretly boring? And the trick is that if you're worried about that your life is boring, then the single best thing that you can do is just live a more interesting life. I would set aside time to go bungee jumping, or ride roller coasters, or walk across the desert, or build an orphanage, or whatever it is that you've got to do. Do the things that interest you the most, and then work on your speeches and your presentations, because believe me, you'll have a whole ton to tell. So
True.
that's
and I see someone here saying, Edith is saying boring life sometimes equals boring environment, which is absolutely true. So then that's up to us to shape our environment or to change it. We're not trees, we don't have roots, we're allowed to move. So maybe not so much these days, but in theory, we're allowed to move and to change our environment. And bouncing off of what you were saying, Adam, I was looking for a few nice quotes for the workshop that I just finished a couple of weeks ago. And there was one that I came across that was so popular that people can't agree who said it. There are about 3 or 4 alleged authors, and it goes like this: they may forget what you said, they may forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And I'm sure some of you have heard this already, and it really goes to show that people take action because of something they feel, not because of something they know. So when you're thinking of your presentations in terms of dispersing knowledge, think always that people need to feel something when they hear you talk about that knowledge. If they feel your excitement, they'll get excited about your research as well, or your design project, or whatever it is you're working on, your startup and so on. So make people feel something. That's when they'll be interested in your story.
Now, this is another a naughty thing that I will tell you, because maybe you're thinking, oh, I've got to be interesting, but what if you're a little bit rebellious? The good news is that terrible, horrific people can be interesting as well. By a show of hands, who's been binge watching Tiger King on Netflix? Who's seen the Tiger King? Who knows that show? If you've not seen Tiger King, then God help you. It is possibly worst human beings on the planet. But when you own a farm with hundreds of tigers and they're biting your arm off and you're shooting people and getting chased by the police and thrown in jail, and President Trump's going to try to pardon you and goodness knows what's happening, you might be a terrible person, but by God, you're living an interesting life and people will be interested in what you have to say, whether it's good or whether it's bad. So maybe that inspires some of the more evil focused people. I know Will is on here, and I know Will is definitely in the evil category. So that's a top tip for Will. So you
and this relates to something you'll be talking about later on, doesn't it, Adam? Because you've got one of these little evil geniuses inside.
maybe we'll get to that later. And of course, sometimes we're afraid of our mistakes, but talking about our mistakes makes you interesting. One of the events that I love to run down at co-working in UNSA is called Fuck Up Nights, where instead of businesses talking about the best things that they do, they talk about their biggest mistakes, their greatest fuck ups. And I tell you what, not only is it hilarious, it makes you really, really interesting. So if there's nothing going well in your life right now, you can still use that to your advantage. So that's a top tip for you. Okay, we should move on to number 2, which I'm looking at my screen, and it's about being nervous and being shy. And this is a really tough one, because the truth is everybody gets nervous when they're about to go on stage and do public speaking. Everybody, whether you've done it once or whether you've done it 100 times. The only real difference is there are 2 kinds of people. There are the people who get nervous and the people who get nervous and hide it really well. So the trick is, if you feel nervous, know that everybody else is nervous too, but you've really just got to hide it. And a great example was, I was talking to a sportsman, an Olympic athlete, and he was a gold medalist for the 400 meters. And he was telling me that you think that when you run and when you prepare for the Olympics, you should be at the peak of your physical ability. You should be the most fastest, the most perfect human being that you can ever be when you're on those starting blocks. But actually, you're not, because you've been training so hard and you're so tired and you're recovering from so many different injuries that if you stand on the starting block in perfect condition, you haven't been training hard enough to earn your place there. So you're injured, you're running around in this subpar way. But the good news is everybody else on those blocks is also running injured as well. So when we look at Olympic athletes, we think we're seeing the best of the best, but actually we're just seeing the best at those hiding from their injuries and hiding from their insecurities. And that's exactly what happens when we speak in public as well. So it affects people in so many different ways. So I want to see how this affects people. So just by a show of hands, who gets like a physical sign of nervousness? Like raise your hand if you actually feel it physically. Okay, it's quite a few people. Who gets shaky hands? Who gets the bit of the shaky hands? Yeah. Anyone get wobbly leg? I get wobbly leg all the time. Like whose leg goes? What about squeaky voice? Anybody get squeaky voice? Anybody gets panicked breathing? Any like hyperventilating? Any sweaty fingers? Oh, anybody gets like all of those things? Okay, thank goodness, because if you get all of them, you should probably see a doctor. It's probably not healthy. But the trick to hiding it is, if you've got a presentation, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, these physical signs can last throughout your entire presentation. And if you think that you don't have physical signs, you do, but you just don't notice it. Because I see this all the time in exams. If you think that your hands are fine and your legs are fine and your voice is fine, your skin will start to change color. And I watch my students and they go red and they start from just under the neck and it goes like something from a monster movie. So even if you think you're calm, we can completely see it. So there's nearly always a physical response. But
neuroscience tells us about that is that our body is actually reacting as if we're in life or death danger, because we think we're super smart and super advanced on the planet, but actually our brain can't tell the difference between social threats, like being in front of people, and real life physical threats. So if you are standing there and feeling like your audience is a panther about to attack you, it's just your brain not catching up with the times. So just notice what you're feeling and realize that if your hands are shaking, if your foot is getting wobbly, if your palms are getting sweaty and all that stuff, it's your brain pushing blood to your extremities, getting you ready to run away from the danger. Except it's a talk, so you can't. But then we have a little something to say about that too.
Exactly, because as much as you'd like to run away from your exam, your job interview, your board meeting, or wherever it is that you're presenting, you can't. So the trick to hide your nerves is to not let them last throughout your entire presentation, but to know that they're coming and to get rid of them as quickly as possible. So the best thing to do is you have this sort of 3-step process. The first step is, and you might want to write this down, to know what your physical signs are. Know what your physical signs are. Know, is it the hands? Is it the wobbly legs? Is it the voice? Is it the sweaty palms? Is it something else? Know what it is.
Yeah.
Once you know what it is, you'll start to feel it as you're about to go on stage. You say thank you to your body for letting you know that you're in a dangerous situation. Your body is doing what it's supposed to be doing. Don't get worked up if your arms start flicking around. And then number 3 is you do your moving on maneuver. Now, a moving on maneuver is different for everybody, but it's a way of snapping your body out of whatever it's going through. So if your hands are shaking, a great way to start is just bang, clap your hands together firmly in the first 3 seconds of your talk. And perhaps you'll see people do this. You see TV presenters all the time starting with a clap if they get wobbly fingers. If your legs start to wobble, my legs wobble all the time. My left leg goes crazy. I just lean all of my body weight onto that left leg so that it can't wobble. If I'm going to be really nervous with breathing, I take one big deep breath. And when I breathe it out, it's a way of saying, okay, that's it, breathing. You've done your thing. It's okay. You can go now. And if your voice starts to shake or break, have a really good phrase that is really well rehearsed that you're going to start your conversation with. Even if it's something as simple as, okay, or are we ready? Or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Whatever it is, know the first 3 or 4 words that are going to come out of your mouth and practice them again and again and again so that you can get them out. It's going to.
So you don't have to think about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if you have really sweaty hands, just wear a suit jacket and come on and wipe them on your suit jacket. It gets you out of all kinds of situations.
Dark color, always.
Definitely. And Oana, you've got a great TED Talk that you like to send people to watch if they're really nervous about this, right?
Yeah, this is my absolute favorite TED Talk of all time. And it's called How to Make Stress Your Friend. We'll send you the link, but if you want to jot it down, this is the name of the talk. And it basically says that people who experience a high amount of stress will only experience cardiovascular disease problems if they think that stress is bad for them. Otherwise, they might have the exact same amount of stress, but there will be no or less cardiovascular disease if they don't consider that stress is bad. So in that talk, just like we quickly covered here, the point is that stress is our body's response to dangerous situations, and what we feel is actually the biology of courage. So our physical reactions are there to help us through these situations. It's a really great talk. I recommend it. It's one of the longer ones, so watch it when you have a bit of time and you want to see a nice TED talk.
Yeah. And there's some great comments coming through on the chat as well. Edith says she likes to hold on to something, even if it's a pen or something to hold on for dear life. And that's a great idea if it gets you through the nerves. But don't forget to put it down a couple of minutes into your talk or presentation so that you're not playing with it and fiddling and distracting people. But that's a great one, Edith.
There's also the classic Angela Merkel diamond.
Oh, yes, yes. That's a great one.
You don't want to look like that in all of your pictures.
And when you start to notice these things, you'll start to notice your favorite celebrities and presenters and politicians using these exact same techniques once you start to notice them. These are things that confident people do. They're not any more or any less confident than you. They're just really good at hiding their nerves. And that moves us on to our next topic, which is all about confidence. Confidence, I see, was a very popular topic on the voting, and confidence and nervousness go hand in hand. And who's done this? Who's seen someone like a late night TV show talk host, and they just walk on, or they're about to host the Oscars or something, and they walk on and there's thousands of people and cameras and live, and they just make it look so smooth. Who's seen that kind of thing? And it's so smooth. You're like, damn, I wish I could do that. I wish I could make it look so smooth and so effortless. And then who thinks, like, you see people walking in front of thousands of people, wow, if I walk in front of a room full of 5 people, I would go to pieces, let alone walking into a room in front of 1,000 people. Who feels that way sometimes? Like they wish that they could have that magical confidence of walking into a room. Well, the thing is, those people who are doing that, they're just as confident as you. The difference between someone who's confident or unconfident when it comes to presenting is simply how well prepared they are. If you think about somebody on a TV show, they've got nothing to worry about because they know that they look good because they've just come out from a hairdresser's and spent an hour in makeup. They know that their suit fits because they've just come from wardrobe. They know what they're going to say because they've practiced it 50 times. They know that they don't have to worry about forgetting the words because the auto cue is right there. And they know that nothing is going to go wrong because the lighting team are looking after the lighting, the sound engineers looking after the sound, and there's a whole team of people helping them out. There's a whole team of people making them look good, and they are really, really well prepared. When you think about it, when you walk out and it's just you and your PowerPoint and you're going to give a little presentation, that's sheer bravery if there's nobody else helping you. Holy smokes, that's terrifying. And if you think, some people will walk out onto a stage and they'll just be like, oh, I'm just going to improvise. I'll just make it up. I've got a few notes. I'm just going to talk about whatever. And they're not prepared to talk. That's terrifying. That's insane. If you were a TV presenter, would you just say, oh, don't worry, it'll be fine. I'll just improvise. I'll just make it up. I won't do any rehearsals. I won't use an auto cue. I won't make a script. I won't follow the director's notes. No, that would be insanity. Preparation really, really helps you. And it helps you become confident, because what you can do, and I do this all the time, is I like to brainstorm absolutely everything that could possibly go wrong, whether it's something realistic or something crazy. And I try to figure out what happens if something goes wrong. And I try to think of absolutely everything. So I think, well, what happens if my PowerPoint doesn't work properly? Do I have a backup? Do I have another laptop that I can borrow? Do I have all the cables? Do I have all the dongles? What happens if I forget my words? Do I have it on the computer screen? What happens if my computer breaks? Do I have it written down on pen and paper? What happens if this? What happens if that? And the more I can think of problems that might happen and then make a solution for those problems, the more confident I feel. When we work at TED Talks, one thing that everybody worries about is, oh, what if my mouth gets dry and I can't talk? And they all freak out about that. So we put a little glass of water on the side of the stage, and nobody ever drinks the glass of water. And we cheer if somebody actually does drink the glass of water, because it never happens. But if there's no glass of water there, everybody freaks out. What happens if I need a glass of water? If you've got it, it's this brilliant safety nets. And this is something that everybody can do, is being more prepared. The more prepared you are, the more confident you will become. And chances are the people around you who are presenting, if you're a student and you've got exams coming up, or if you're in a pitch competition or something like that, chances are that other people will not be as prepared as you when you know the preparation gives you confidence. It's a great way to kick ass. And Oana, you've got a great tip for people who are a little nervous to prepare, right?
I do, and it also relates very well to a couple of comments we're getting about over preparing and making the presentation look a little bit too rehearsed, or getting too nervous if you prepare too much and then suddenly panic about forgetting your words and all that stuff. And what Adam is actually referring to is not necessarily memorizing everything by heart, but making yourself familiar with everything that might happen, because familiarity increases your comfort feeling and decreases your threat feeling. So the more familiar you are with your PowerPoint, with the way the room looks, with maybe giving the presentation to a few people who like you and you know that they're going to cheer for you, the more you do that, the easier it's going to be. And the reason is the only real rehearsal is real life rehearsal. You can do it in your head and that helps a little bit, but what helps most is doing presentations in real life. But if you put yourself in a context that has a high chance of a good outcome, that will increase your confidence. It will decrease your sensitivity to the situation, and your brain will learn that the panther is not going to kill you. You will survive public speaking if you do it a few times with a good outcome. So try and put yourselves in that kind of situation where colleagues, family, friends, people who really love you can hear you do the talk, and then, give you a big thumbs up.
For sure. And it's a really good point about being over-rehearsed, but actually what we see more than anything is under-rehearsal. And let me give you a great example, because I'm quite sure that this has happened to almost everybody here. Whenever you want to do some public speaking or presenting and you feel a little bit nervous, maybe you will Google public speaking tips or presentation tips, or you'll go and ask your mom. And your mom will say, and Google will say the same thing, go and practice your talk in front of a mirror. Go and practice your presentation in front of a mirror. Who has heard this advice before, that you should go and practice your presentation in front of a mirror? I'm hoping 99% of people have heard this advice. So even though we've heard this advice, who has gone and actually practiced in front of a mirror? Be honest now. So, okay, there's like three people with their hands up. So
I've
well
never
done.
done it, not even once.
and sometimes what people will do is they'll say, oh, I know I should practice in front of the mirror. They go to the bathroom, they look themselves right in the mirror, and they go, oh, I'll be fine. And they
Okay,
can't
now
even
I've done it.
bring themselves to practice just once because they see that as somehow too embarrassing or too terrifying. So it's not really about being over rehearsed, but just know that if you're in any kind of competitive situation, like a Dragon's Den or a pitching or a business situation or a job interview or something like that, chances are the people going before you haven't even looked themselves in the mirror and tried out what they're going to say. And I think that's completely insane. So that's a great tip for confidence.
There's a really cool comment here from Maria. She says she wants to be able to react with charm even when something really unexpected happens. And this makes me think back at one of my methodology trainers back when I was teaching English, presentation skills in English. And this person said to me, never teach the plan, teach the people. And I'll always remember it because it's definitely applying to public speaking as well. We talk to people who are sitting there in front of us. We're not doing a memorized talk, for sure.
So I think we should move on to the next topic, which is also really fun to do on webcam, which is body language. And I get asked this a lot about how to use body language in different ways, because when we're working with speaking, recently there is the world's biggest killer of body language, and its name is PowerPoint. PowerPoint has killed the art of body language, because why say it with your body when you can say it with ridiculous Microsoft clip art? Okay, hate PowerPoint. So one of the things that you can do is this. If you're ever wondering how to improve your body language, take your PowerPoint presentation, count the number of slides, and delete half of them completely at random. Just chop them in half, get rid of them, and act out those slides instead. So if you've got a 10 PowerPoint presentation, chop it down to 5 and act the others. Here's why. People don't fall in love with your PowerPoint, they fall in love with you. And whatever it is that you're doing when you're presenting, going for a job interview, going for a pitch, trying to get someone to buy what you're selling, whatever it is, you need them to fall in love with you, not your PowerPoint, no matter how sexy it looks. And every time that PowerPoint changes, the person's eyes move from you up to this big screen. And this screen is big and bright and flashy and looks really cool. But you're beautiful and you're interesting and you're dynamic and you're communicating so much with your face and your fingers and your tone of voice. Why would you leave it to a piece of Bill Gates software to communicate the passion that's inside you? Use your body instead. And I'll show you, these are my top tips for really sneaky ways to convert your PowerPoint into body language. The first way is really simple. If you have a PowerPoint with bullet points in it, ditch the bullet points, use your fingers. You can say the first thing I'm going to show you is this, the second thing is this, and the third thing is this. And you can count them off, 1, 2, 3. It's great because your hand naturally has 5 organic, fully functioning bullet points that are ready at any moment. And all the time people are looking at you and not your screen. And you can go backwards and forwards through the points. And when you're counting off on your fingers, you're not going to ever forget them. And no one's going to be reading them as you're talking. So you can use your fingers as your instant bullet points. Super easy. Another thing is if you have one of those PowerPoint presentations where you're comparing 2 different things. Maybe you've got advantages in one column and disadvantages in another, or you've got this year's results and last year's results, or your work and the competitor's work, something like that in 2 places. Use the physical space to move left and right when you're talking about different things. So you can physically move over here when you're talking about the good stuff, and move over here when you're talking about the bad stuff. We've got the pros, we've got the cons, we've got this year, we've got last year, whatever it might be. And if you're really sophisticated, you can use 3 different places to move around. I was working on a talk coaching a TED talk all about, it was really complicated. And it was about 3 different philosophical mindsets of God, and thinking about religion in a really interesting way, and thinking about religion in 3 ways at once, which is really hard for anybody to do, let alone to explain it in 18 minutes. And how we worked with the speaker to do it was, every time he would talk about one method, he'd move all the way to the left of the stage. When he'd talk about another method, he'd move right to the center, and another method all the way to the right of the stage. And once he'd established the physical place for each one of these things, he could run backwards and forwards to each spot so that we would instantly know what he was talking about. No need to flick backwards and forwards. You can physically move. And a really good thing that you can do with this is, if you ever have to be critical of what you're doing, because there will be times, so many design students say, like, how do I present my work best? This is how you do it. Sometimes you have to say the bad things about your work, and that really sucks, because you want to put across your best side forward. So what you can do is you can physically distance yourself from the bad things. What I mean by that is, if I'm spending all of my time talking to you over here, and then I have to talk about all of the disadvantages and all of the problems, I don't want to talk to you straight on. I want to move all the way over to the side as I talk about all of the bad things, all of the negative stuff, and then I casually want to move myself back to the middle, and I'm putting a physical distance between the 2 things. Now, if you watch any good stand-up comedian, they will do this all the time, because have you ever seen a stand-up comedian have an argument with himself or with herself when he said, oh, I was walking down to the shops the other day and I saw this guy and he said, hey, what are you doing? And they will physically change and move. If you watch anything by Eddie Izzard, watch Eddie Izzard when he does his comedy in French. You can understand absolutely everything that he's saying because of how he moves around and physically changes the space to act as if he's a different person. And this can be such a good tip for those of you who are in exams, because you want to talk about the bad stuff, but you don't want to get punished for the bad stuff. So say the bad stuff somewhere else. Steve Jobs does this all the time. When Steve Jobs talks about what's happened in the past, he's always on the right-hand side of the stage. And when he shows you the product that is the future, he moves to the middle of the stage. It's genius. Any Steve Jobs thing, watch it. That's what he does. That's how he positioned his stuff in the future.
And speaking of body language and slides, a follow-up of teach the people, not the plan, is talk to the audience, not to the slide, because so often we see speakers talking to the slides that are here while the audience is over there, and they're talking and pointing at the slide, and nobody can see their face. So it's like they're having a conversation with their own PowerPoint. So the audience is there, the presentation is you, as I always tell all of my speakers, not your PowerPoint.
So does this sound good so far? Are you enjoying these tips? Yep. Good, because you just followed my next body language tip, which is you do what you want the audience to do. So by giving the thumbs up, you give the thumbs up. If I want a show of hands, I can say, by a show of hands, who's ever been asked a question before? And hopefully you'll all raise your hands because you've all been asked a question before. Because if I do it first, you're more likely to copy. If you want the audience to clap, you just start clapping, they will start clapping. It's amazing. Whatever you do, the audience will often...
That's how we get our standing ovations.
Exactly. And I do have my sneaky tip as well for people who are nice. Who's a nice person here? Who wants to be liked by their audience? Okay, good. There's a few nice. This is my nice tip. Okay, the nice tip is the clipboard. This is absolute magic. Go out and buy a clipboard. Doesn't even have to have any notes on it. If you have to give somebody bad news or precise news, use a clipboard, because there's a very big difference between me saying, guys, we've got a problem and it's really terrible and something has gone wrong, then going, guys, I think we've got a problem and there's something that's gone wrong. And now I'm not telling you off, the clipboard's telling you off. And as well, if we've got statistics, if I tell you 50 million people do this, it sounds a throwaway comment. But if I say, 50 million people do this. The clipboard has it. It must be right. The clipboard has so much power and so much magic in it. And if you don't like clipboards, use your notes, whatever it is. You can use this to come across as more authoritarian, but you also give your authority to this magical world.
So you dissociate the bad stuff from your person. It gets put into the clipboard, like Ramita does with the team notes in our team meetings. When she wants to give us extra jobs.
Definitely. I would not recommend using this in your personal life, because if you're dating someone and it's not going very well, and then you go, well, unfortunately, the position of girlfriend is no longer required, you're not going to do yourself any favors. But hey, you can give it a try. So the next most popular one, I think, is, if we move on, it's about this idea, and this is so tough. The idea about inserting jokes or fun or making the audience laugh, giving a bit of energy, making something different. And this is a really big challenge, because who has seen somebody doing some public speaking or presenting and they open with a joke and the joke is terrible and nobody laughs? Who's seen that before? Okay, nearly everybody. That's a universal thing. Okay, who has thought about putting in a joke into their presentation and then they get to tell the joke and it falls flat for them, for yourself? Like, who's tried it and it's failed? Who thought about putting a joke in and you were just about to tell the joke, and 2 seconds before you think, oh God, no, I can't possibly tell that joke? Who's had that lack of confidence there? Oh, Christian's hand's right up there. So yeah, this happens all the time. Jokes always fall flat because your audience don't care about your jokes. They care about your character. So what I would suggest that you do is never, never, never work on your jokes, work on your character. That's top tip. And people say, what is working on your character? What does your character mean? And it takes a long time to develop some character. But what character is when we're on stage, we have a very limited amount of time for the audience to get to know us. And if they got to know the real us, they would see that we are complicated, complex, deep individuals. We've got a lot of stuff going on in our lives. But if you've only got 15 minutes in front of people, you can't show them all of the nuances of your soul. So instead, it can be more effective to look at all of the different qualities that you have and pick one or two of your favorite qualities and exaggerate them slightly and forget about all of the other qualities. What this allows you to do is put your one or two best qualities or most interesting qualities forward and then respond to everything through that character. A great example is, has anybody been rewatching Friends on Netflix during the lockdown? I started right back at episode 1, and it's great watching. And you think, Friends is so funny. There's so many great jokes in Friends. But if you watch an episode, I've been counting how many actual jokes are in Friends, and there's probably only about 4 or 5 jokes in each episode. The reason why it's so funny is because there's so many great characters, and you know that Chandler will always answer with something sarcastic, and Phoebe will always answer with something kooky, and Joey will always answer with something stupid, and so on and so on. The characters tell the joke, and it doesn't really matter what they say. What matters is the fact that they say it through the character's lens. They can have an argument and they can fall in love in exactly the same way through this lens of character. So I'll give you an example. Sometimes I like to test out different characters. And sometimes back when I was working at a business academy, I had 3 classes back to back learning the same content. So for fun, I made 3 different characters to teach the students in the same content in 3 different ways. And the first character that I had was this really secretive character. And I thought, what happens if I'm just secretive? And that's going to be my character style. So I'd walk into the room and I'd speak in low, hushed tones. And I'd close the door and I'd make sure that nobody followed me. And I'd say, listen, guys, today I'm going to teach you something, but it's not really on the curriculum. It's going to be something a little bit secret. I'm not supposed to teach it to you. But if anybody asks, will you tell them that I taught you the thing that we're supposed to learn? And instead, I'll tell you the secret thing. Oh my God. You could hear a pin drop. The notebooks are out. They're really like excited about this. And if I want to get them to read something, I'll say, now, this book's been banned by the school. I'm not even supposed to give you it. But if you turn to chapter 3, we're going to find something really good. And all of a sudden, everybody's reading chapter 3 and it becomes infinitely more exciting. And then the next class, I think, what other characteristic could I try? And I thought, well, I'm British. I should increase my British accent. And the funny thing is, whenever you watch a movie, the bad guy is always British, right? Even in The Lion King or something, they're in the middle of the jungle, but yet Scar, the bad guy, has a British accent. I don't know quite how. So I thought I would be like the evil villain. And I would go into the class really evil, and I would say, you know what? It doesn't matter whether you pass or fail. We're going to learn it anyway. And there's always some students who fail, and this is going to be terrible. I'm going to set you the worst homework, and I don't care if you do the homework or not. And I'll be really evil and sort of almost Mr. Burns, sort of excellent. And whenever something would go right, I love the smell of failure. And terrible things, like I was truly, truly evil. But I'm not evil in my heart. And the students absolutely loved evil, evil mode. They thought it was hilarious. They felt like they could do anything because we were going to take over the world and create an evil empire. And the third one, well, I'm not going to tell you about the third one because it did involve Andre trying to shoot me with a gun, as we mentioned earlier, and get me to drown in a canoe at SDU. So the less said about the third character, the better. But the wonderful thing is, once you develop these characters, these exaggerations of yourself, people know exactly what to expect because it becomes really consistent. So if I'm the secretive guy, the students will come to me in a secretive way and say, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to do this. Can you help me with this? And if I'm the evil guy, they're like, yeah, I want to take over the world. How do we destroy the competition? How do we go bigger and better? And all this good stuff. So you can think about what's in your character and what's interesting about it. Exaggerate it a little bit and use that as a lens for everything that you do. So when you ask a question, ask your question in the character. When something goes wrong, it should go wrong in your character. When something goes right, it should go right in your character. And create this exaggeration of yourself. And if you're not sure, just watch any Robin Williams movie ever and look at the characters that he creates. He's a genius at creating characters, and see just how far different characters can take you. Watch Mrs. Doubtfire. It's a masterclass if you haven't seen that already. Okay, looking through, I think we've got time for like one last tip. And
which should it be? We've also got a couple of questions, Adam, about dealing with stress when we have no feedback from the audience. But we can possibly answer that combined with one of the tips we've got.
It's definitely right. Stress from the audience. I love an audience. I've never been stressed by an audience, but so many people get stressed from an audience. So this should be our last
when it's tip. Like a monologue and you don't get any clue with what they're feeling or what they're thinking.
Okay, there's so many great techniques that you guys can use here. And the cheekiest one, who's ever been like frightened of a question or frightened of what the audience might say or what they might think or what the examiner might say or something like that? Okay. One of the scary things when you're presenting and then you know there's going to be some questions at the end It's really scary if nobody asks a question, because you're like, oh, okay. And it's also really scary if somebody asks a question and you think that you don't know the answer, because you feel like you're being judged, right? So you can flip it around. And what I like to do is I like to, right at the start, go in with some prizes. Books make great prizes, and say, I've got a prize for the best question. So whoever asks me the best question gets the book or the cookie or whatever. And for the price of going to the bookstore and just buying a book that really inspired you in your project or whatever it is, and you're going to give that away. And what happens is then everybody wants the free prize. So you will get 100 questions. Everybody's hand will shoot up. So you can then go and pick the ones that look the friendliest. So you don't pick the real angry person in the corner. So you get to pick and choose who asks the question, which gives you a bit of confidence. And then another thing is, when they ask that question, you might feel like you're being judged by their question. But now you can be like, oh no, now I'm the judgee, because I've got to decide whose question is good. So even if you ask me this mean, horrible question, you're not going to win my prize. So, and it puts you in a bit more of a situation of power. It's purely a mental thing that's going to help you. And for the price of a book or a cookie, it's well worth it. So it flips it around. And another thing
is,
oh, yeah.
well, you can't please everybody at the same time. So that's just something that we have to accept. We can't make everybody happy. Not everybody will love us, but we can try to get people on our side. So if we can do that before we get into this treacherous territory of taking challenges or questions from the audience, then it'll be a little bit easier if we manage to make them fall in love with us at the beginning.
And there's, I do have one small tip and then one ultimate tip that we will finish on. So the one small tip is, if you're ever worried about something in your presentation that might get picked up on by a question, call it out first before the audience notice it. What that means is, if there's something that you're going to say but you're not sure, you can say, now stop me if this sounds crazy, but no one will ever stop you that it sounds crazy. You can say, I might get this wrong, but I think, or you might think differently to me, but here's what I'm going to go with. And even if you're trying to do something wrong with technology, sometimes maybe you're presenting some complicated demo. Oftentimes web designers and things have to bring, their website or an app up on screen, and there's always something that goes wrong. And it's perfectly fine before it starts to say, I hope this works. And all of a sudden the audience is kind of rooting for you. They're keeping their fingers crossed as well, because you're sharing the responsibility of what might go wrong. So you should have no problem with calling it out. It's the ultimate get out of jail free card. And I think we can perhaps end on the final tip. You're right that you can't please all the people all the time, but you can prepare people to be pleased. And this is such a great tip that I learned from my mentor, Nikki Ernst. And this was when I had to present for the first time at a really high pressure presentation to 500 people in Austria, and I knew nobody, and I was terrified. And he gave me this brilliant piece of advice that you can all do as well. And that was, before the event started, I went out into the lobby and I saw all the people lining up and, giving their coats in and getting their cups of coffee. And I found a group of 5 or 6 of them that looked kind of friendly. And I went up and said, hi, I'm Adam. I'm one of the speakers today, and I'm really nervous. And I'm giving the 3rd talk. Would you cheer for me when I come on, because I'm so nervous? And will you laugh when I say something funny and be my cheerleaders? And they were, oh yeah, sure, of course, no problem. And I said, and could you maybe sit in the front couple of rows so that I can see you, because then I'll have some friends who are cheering for me. Yeah, great. And when it comes to the questions bit, if you could just ask me about this kind of thing, that would really be helpful. And what was great is I sort of forget about it because I'm so in the zone for this talk. And then right there on the second row, this whole group, and they've got their friends and they're whispering, oh, that's our guy, we got to cheer for him. And they gave me massive cheers, and they were there asking the questions and everything. And it was brilliant. And it was a beautiful setup. But it's that level of preparation that if you've got a friend in the crowd, it's really going to neutralize any negativity that might come towards you, because the audience don't want to be negative towards you. They want to help you all the time, but it feels like they do. So having a few friends there can really help. So that's the ultimate killer tip. If you've got to present, get a few of your friends in to cheer you on. Okay, well, I think that's all the time that we have for everything right now. But you know what? We should maybe open it up to a couple of questions. We've had some questions coming through in the chat. So if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. Oh, Anna, have you seen anything interesting coming up?
Yeah, there's a question about what if the audience doesn't seem to get it? What do we do then? Like, you're giving your best and everybody's just blank, no reaction, no response. Then what?
That is great. That can be such a challenge. And especially if you're presenting internationally. For example, you might have something that is really great in Denmark, and the minute you go to Finland, it just falls flat for whatever reason. Yeah. And one of the techniques that I use when how I get over this is I'll go to the conference or the event or whatever it is, and I'll arrive really early. And what I like to do is I like to sit in the audience on the backmost row. And I like to feel the energy of the audience. And as they're watching other speakers or other presenters, I try to see what is the audience responding to and what are they not responding to. If they're laughing a lot to jokes, then that's great. Maybe I put some jokes and good character in. If they're more reserved, maybe I'll tone it down. And if you don't have time to sit in the back of the audience, go onto the Instagram page of the event and start to notice what people are wearing. Look at how they're dressed. Are they in conservative business dress? Are they a jeans and t-shirt kind of audience? Are they happy and smiling and laughing? Or are they very looking like a whole bunch of accountants? And try to match the energy of the audience. And you want to be slightly higher energy than the audience, not by much, because if you've got a very boring audience and you run out going, whoa, yeah, hyper, yeah, great, go, that's going to fall flat. It's not that you need to lift the energy of the room by a massive amount. You need to do it by just a tiny bit. And what I do when you start to know your character, I actually made a video of this for an online training. And this is really funny. When I get asked to speak at an event, I'll look at the pictures of past year's events. And if they have chairs that are blue in a row, I immediately turn down the event. I never do an event with blue chairs, because whenever there's an event with blue chairs, it's always held at some Radisson hotel, and it's usually full of a bunch of middle managers, and they bring me because they like me to raise the energy, because I talk a lot about innovation, but I do it in a fun way, and they know all of their other speakers are boring. Let's get Adam on to lift it up. But I'm not a circus performer. I'm not the warm-up guy. I'm not the comedian. And so when I see that, I know instantly what they're going for. So I stay clear of blue chairs. Now, the more that you practice, the better you'll get at matching the audience's response. And you'll probably have to do at least 10 times where it falls flat completely before you can get to that level of not having it fall flat anymore. So if you do, and it does turn out to be a big disaster, just count that down and go tick. Okay, I got 9 more disasters to go before it gets better. I hope that helps with your question.
It also means that you have to know your content really well to be able to adapt it last minute, though. So that's one thing to bear in mind, and to not be afraid to tweak the plan a little bit just before you go on stage. And
you have to answer this one
yes.
About advice for what to do when your train of thought goes.
Oh yeah.
And yeah,
There's
and it's like when you forget, brain freeze.
There's a great story about this one. There's two stories actually. One is a story of the brain, about what happens when we actually freeze, and the moment when you can't find your words is the moment when your brain releases so much cortisol, which is our stress hormone, that your blood vessels contract, and literally oxygen is cut off from the part of your brain that deals with language and memory and complex concepts. So you literally don't have access to your words anymore. So the key to that, as well as the cure for a red face, I saw that comment earlier, is to just desensitize yourself to the situation by gradual exposure, what we were talking about earlier. And another great story is one of our former speakers, Heather Hansen, who kind of made a map of her talk in the room where she was going to give the talk. So she knew that when she would come on stage and look at the door, she would have to talk about this part of the talk. And when she would look at the window, then she would have the second part. And when she would look at the middle row, she would have the third part of the talk. And when she would look to the right at the exit, then she would have the conclusion of the talk. So just from looking throughout the room, she was guided in following her structure. So she was able to not skip any parts, to say everything in the correct order. Because sometimes we get stuck because we realize we skipped something and we don't know what's next. So that's how she managed to kind of follow along with her memorization technique.
I noticed a question from Louisa, but she's not going to like the answer. The question is, if your voice gets a tremble every time you start a presentation, do you think it's good to say it to your audience? You can call it out and you can say, oh, I'm sorry if I'm sounding a little bit funny. But to be honest, the audience won't know. They might think that that's how you sound anyway. If you are really worried about your voice trembling, there is something that you can do, and nobody likes it. But what I would strongly recommend you do is you go to the venue where your exam or your presentation or whatever it is going to be, and you go the night before when nobody is there and it's really quiet. Stand exactly where you're going to stand, and then jump up and down and yell at the top of your lungs and make a lot of noise. And I'm not just talking about woohoo, I'm talking about screaming. And we do this exercise with a lot of our more nervous speakers. And usually the first time I will yell, Rah! And they'll go, Rah! And I'll go, no, come on, 3, 2, 1, go. Rah! And they'll do it a little bit more. 3, 2, 1, and I'll shut up. And they will yell really loud. And they realize the power that their voice has and how their voice sounds when it echoes back. Because oftentimes the reason why our voice tremors is because we're hearing it in this strange acoustic way, and we're hearing all kinds of bounce back. So the more you get comfortable with the power of your sound, the better. Singers do this all the time.
Like
audio and engineers do this all the time. So it's not uncommon. It just feels really weird.
There's a question about something really practical. Someone has an exam video presentation next week.
Oh, good luck.
There's little communication with the group. Everybody's in different countries. Do we have an idea for how to connect more with the group before the presentation?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good one.
It's called LinkedIn.
Yeah. Well, actually, when you're working with a group, and I wrote a blog post, if you go to gopublicspeaking.com, it's where I write all kinds of things about public speaking. You can check it out. We'll send you the link later on. And specifically about how students work in groups, because the absolute worst thing that you can do is you can say, oh, you do the first 5 minutes, you do the next 5 minutes, and you do the final 5 minutes, and we all take care of our own individual bits. You've got to see yourself as a really cohesive group, almost like a band. So if there's anything that you can do, any games that you can play where you can start interrupting each other, jumping in and out of each other's conversations, building on each other's ideas without upsetting the flow, can really help. So if there's any kind of fast, rapid fire board games or something that you'd like to play, that's really cool. A game that is really fun for learning about communication skills on video chat, like in Zoom, is this. And maybe we can play a little game of this later. Maybe there might be too many people to play this. But if you're in a team of about 5 or 6 or 3 or 4, this can work really well. You switch on your microphone, and in your group, all you have to do is count to 10. And if somebody interrupts you, you start back at 1. But each person is only allowed to say one number. You sort of jump in. So I might say 1, and then we have to wait, and somebody has to randomly decide to say 2, and somebody randomly has to say 3, and somebody randomly has to decide to say 4, but you don't know who's going to say it next. So there might be long pauses in it. And what will happen is you'll realize just how difficult it is to start to count to 10. And actors use this all the time in improvisation, so that they get used to knowing when to interrupt people, and they get used to the feeling and the lag between them. There's a great book by Augusto Boal, who wrote a book called Games for Actors and Non-Actors. You can probably find it as a PDF download. If you check that out, there's tons of acting and drama games that you can really use to build your verbal and physical responses and build that team cohesion. You can have, and it's a ton of fun as well. After your exam, if you succeed or if you fail, you can play it as drinking games as well, which is also cool.
There was a question a bit earlier, Adam, if we have time for maybe just 1 or 2 more.
I think one more.
Yeah.
Is it a good one? I'll make a good one for the last one.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's about memorizing versus bringing in notes.
Oh, man.
Speaking of sticking to your talk and sticking to your structure and how to not sound too rehearsed, I think it's something that can kind of bring everything together.
Yeah, that's really good. And it's a brilliant question, because we advise different people to do different things. Mm-hmm. It depends very much on your style and what you're comfortable with. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really matter how you remember your talk. What matters is how brilliantly you deliver your talk. So pick the one that works the best for you. If you're prone to going off topic, if you're prone to forgetting things, and you feel a lot more comfortable having it all written down word for word perfectly, then do that. If you feel good about improvising and it feels more natural to you, that's fine. And some people like to do a combination of the two. They like to have the first section, like maybe the beginning and the ending really locked down, and the middle they improvise or have bullet points.
That also helps with the first few seconds of stress, right? If you have your introduction really well set in your memory, then you can just deliver it without thinking too much, and then by the time you're done, you've also calmed down a little bit. The face is not so red, the palms are not so shaky.
There is one extra thing that not many people know, but Christian will know this because we went through this process together. And one of the things that you can do is, most people think if you write down a script and memorize it word for word and read it back perfectly word for word, that you sound like a robot, because they've seen that happen. But actually, that's not true. It all depends on how you write the script. So when I was working with Christian, what we did was we sat down for about 4 hours and we just talked casually and I press record on my iPhone and I record everything that we talk about for 4 hours and we get some ideas. And then a couple of weeks later, I went back to his house again and we talked for about another 4 hours and we talked about all kinds of things. And then we went out for dinner. And Christian doesn't know this, but when we went out for dinner, he thought we were just chatting about lovely dinner, but I keep the phone running. So I'm getting all of these little offhand comments as well. And when I get back to my desk, I listen to sort of 16, 20 hours worth of audio using his exact words. And I just cut out the most interesting bits and tie them together in the script. So when Christian can read his script, it's stuff that he's actually said in the way that he's said it. So if he's the kind of person who says, you know what, then you know what becomes in the script. Now, Christian is really well-spoken and he has a really nice, clear voice. So this is really easy. But just recently I was working on a script with a guy who is a Somalian barber, and he's completely crazy and he speaks with this really great rhythm and lots of slang and lots of swearing, and all those things go into his script. So when he reads it back, it will sound natural, but we even keep all of the false starts and verbal tics. So when you write, don't write through typing, right through the way that you speak. Record your audio first and then type it up word for word, dot for dot, pause for pause, and then you can memorize your talk perfectly and still sound natural. That's a tip that not many people know.
And that also helps with chunking your language, because when you have these expressions that you always use, the way that the words naturally work together, you don't have to think of every individual word like a single unit, which reduces your ums and ahs in the talk, because words are just flowing from one expression to the next like you would normally say it, without you having to think, okay, what comes after.
So I think that's all we've got time for right now, but thank you so much everybody for joining us. Did anybody learn something new today? Yeah. Oh, there's some two thumbs up. That's great. Does anyone feel like slightly more confident for their presentations in the future? Do you think there's a couple of things that you can use? Thank God, because I've got some of you for exam and I do not want to sit through hours and hours of boring exam. I'm so pleased when my students are here. Does anyone think like, yeah, I could do a TED Talk now. I'm ready to get on stage for prime time. Hey, yeah. Oh, I like it. We were using the wobbly hand in the middle. Camilla's Yanni's got like some disco dancing going on there. Wonderful. Well,
you know what would be really cool? If everybody gives us a big wave and I take a little video of that.
All right.
So we do that. Everybody wave.
So you're definitely sharing this on Facebook now.
Yeah, that's so cool. Thanks.
So,
alrighty.
I know we didn't get through all of the tips. Would any of you want some more of this, like in a few weeks' time? Do you think we should do this again? Is this good? Is this maybe, there's some who thinks they'd rather watch Tiger King all over again than join in one of these massive Zoom calls? No. Okay, because maybe I think we pretty much maxed out the limit for Zoom this time. But next time, what if we got 1,000 people? Do you think we could do it for 1,000? Like for no other reason than it would be like
one friend.
Really fun.
Yeah.
Would you be up for that? Is there somebody that you know who would have benefited from this, who you would want to invite? Okay. There's a few thumbs up. A few people are thinking, no, I'm keeping all this for myself. I keep the secret. I mean, maybe we'll try it. I don't know if we're brave enough. But if you've enjoyed this stuff, and if you need any help, you can always contact myself or Anna or any of the team. And when the next time that you're watching a TED Talk and you're thinking, damn, I wish I could do something like that, just remember that there's a team of about 50 of us working behind the scenes all the time to make these people shine. So try to compare what you can do with what they can do and think, wow, if I had that help, if I had that support network, then you have that power within you to be a brilliant speaker, no matter how nervous you are, genuinely. And all of us at TEDx want to help you guys out however we can, because the world is a better place when you can share your ideas freely and convincingly and in a good way. If the whole world
and
could,
authentically.
Yeah, if the whole world can share how they feel and what's in their hearts and what's in their mind in a way, we could really make some big changes. So that's what Oana and I are all about. So yeah, cool. Thanks for joining us. We might stick around if there's any of you who are desperate to ask questions or anything like that, like sneakily at the end, if there's anyone been a bit too embarrassed to ask questions. And but hopefully we'll see many of you next time, and with your friends and your pets. Oh, yes, hi. Okay, right. See you soon, and thank you so much.
So much, everyone.
And bye to all of your pets and your kids.